Hello everyone, it's Josh Kinney again, and in this tutorial we'll be discussing optionals within Swift. Now what is an optional? Well, let's look at this playground and find out. So right now we have a variable called full name set to my name, and this is correct because my name is Josh Kinney. However, if we were inside of our app and we wanted to pass in the full name but we don't quite know the name yet, we need to set it to nil. We need to set it to nothing. Because setting it to any kind of string, even an empty string, wouldn't be correct because it's not an actual string yet. We don't know what it is. It may be nothing set yet. And the way we can do this is by, instead of adding a string, we type in the characters nil, which mean nothing in Swift. And then after that string there, you add the question mark, telling it to be optional. That's what the question mark is for. And I'm sure if you're working inside of Swift, you've seen question marks. That's what they're doing. They're making those variables or constants optionals so they can take that data and either pass it in or leave it nil. And you'll see here, if I hit play, it's going to now be set to nil. If I want to later on though, let's say full name equals Ron Johnson and hit play, now we changed that full name to Ron Johnson. It's no longer nil. So it can have a string in it, or it could stay nil. That's what optionals do. Gives you that option. But now let's look at an issue we're going to see. If we hit print full name, you will see down here it says optional. Well, it says it there too, but you'll see optional Ron Johnson, and we get a warning because we need to now unwrap this string. And I'll show you how to do that. Now we're going to do an if-let statement to unwrap this. But first I want to show you this full name. If I go ahead and try to access the description in this, you'll see automatically it adds this optional right here telling it that, hey, this is still an optional, so you're not actually safely unwrapping this. So to do that, let's look at an if-let statement real quick. So if-let is unwrapped is equal to full name. We're going to do something. And what are we going to do? We're going to print. We're going to do string interpolation here. And we're going to pass in is unwrapped is the description. Because that's what we're going to be checking. Oh, is unwrapped. I'm sorry. You got to do dot description is the description. And then else, what are you going to do? You're just going to print, and this is a safely unwrapping part. We're going to tell it, hey, guess what? There is no full name set. So the full name is not set. Sorry. So now let's play this. Well, I'm going to get rid of that print statement so we're not getting confused. Hit play, and you'll see down here, Ron Johnson is the description. Now, the description isn't really a good one to use because it's doing the same thing. Whether I put dot description or not, it's still going to print out Ron Johnson. So Ron Johnson is the description, but I just want to show you accessing these. They're still showing this as an optional. So that's the way to unwrap it. Now, here's another thing we can look at. Let's get rid of full name altogether. And now it's set to nil again as it was in the beginning. Now let's hit play. And you don't get nil anymore. It totally takes that away. We get a property each time. This is saying the full name is not set. So in your code, if you get this alert or this warning, you know, hey, there's nothing in there. I set this code up. There's nothing setting that full name. And then you can go and either decode it, or maybe there's nothing passed in yet. And it's working like it's supposed to. So pretty powerful stuff. Now let's look at this guard statement and how you can unwrap with that. So guardlets are great as they will unwrap those optionals for you. However, if they get a nil passed in, it expects you to either exit out of the loop or the function or the condition, whatever you're using, expects it to stop. And then the big thing between that if-let and the guardlet is once the actual guardlet is done, that optional can no longer be accessed. So let's start with a function here, and we're going to name this my full page. And then from there, we're going to pass in a underscore, which means we're not going to name that label. We're going to name this label though as B, and then we're going to set this to string, but we're going to add that question mark to make it optional. Now, I want this to make sense, so my full age is would be the better term, but we can't use is because it's a special word within Swift. So my full age B. It's the closest I can get to make a sentence make sense. Not very many other words that are similar to is. So anyways, from there you're going to do guard, and I'm going to go ahead and show you this guard statement. If I do right here, we're going to go down to guardlet, and you're going to see you have a constant equals expression, else return this. So your constant is, I'm going to keep the same as we use up here. So we're going to do it is unwrapped. And again, this could be anything you want, but I want to keep it the same so it makes sense. Now your expression here is we're going to set this to equal that B. Okay, so if this is equal to B, great. Else we're gonna actually do a print statement here. So else we're gonna do this, and then we're going to actually back this up here, and we're going to do a print statement before we return. So print, and then inside here we're going to say no age was defined. Okay, and then we're going to return. Great, and I'm going to get that on its own line. But after the return, you got to do your last statement, because if this did equal this, what do we need to do? Well, we need to pass in that age. So we're going to do another print statement. Goodness. Typing's all over the place, guys. And then we're going to say my full name, or age, sorry, is, and then we're going to do string interpolation, and we're going to pass in is unwrapped. And that's how we're going to safely unwrap this now. So now if we come down here and we use this function, so my full age, now you can see this is what I meant, my full age B. It just reads a little bit cleaner. But we're going to click on that, and it's needing a string of optional. Let's go ahead and put in 45. And then if we hit play, oh goodness, it's not a string, guys. It's an integer. All right, so if you caught that and you watched this whole time cringing because you wanted me to make that an integer, you are correct. So I'm going to go up here and get rid of this. We're going to comment this out just so it's not fogging up the print console down here. We're going to hit play again, and you're going to see my full age is 45 with no optional. And if I was to pass in nil, like I said in the beginning of this, it wants it to exit. So it's going to say, oh, no age was defined. Let's get out of here. Return. And it says that. So it safely unwraps whatever we pass in here, whether it's a nil or an actual value. It passes in. All right. Now let's talk about force unwrapping. Now, I'm sure you've probably heard force unwrapping is the worst, never do it, shy away from it, and I would have to agree with that to a sense. However, sometimes there is a time and place where force unwrap is needed or necessary or makes sense. But in the beginning of your career, definitely safely unwrap everything until you get comfortable with it and you understand the differences in the two, and then start kind of dabbling into force unwrap. I want to show you what it looks like though, so you can kind of see it in code and know what's going on. So let's go ahead and comment that out. I'm going to paste it here. I have a string that is set to 100, but it's a string because you have the double quotes. And then now here I have a string to int. So I'm wrapping my string into with parentheses and then the keyword int. And what that's going to do is it's going to take your string 100 and turn it into a integer 100. But if I click on this eyeball right here, you're going to see it says optional. That means it can be nil, and I can show you that. If I change this to Frank, well, that's not an integer, so it can't actually take it from a string to integer. So instead, what it's going to do is it's going to return nil, which means nothing. And you don't want that happening in your code. So what you can do is you can force unwrap. So right here where this is, after this my string, you can do an exclamation mark, which is the opposite of a question mark. Instead of it being optional, it's going to say, hey, this for sure is going to be, in this case, an integer. Go ahead and pass it. We accept it. But if it's not, for instance, Frank is not an integer, and we hit play, it's going to break your code. It could break down your app. It could do a lot of things. So you want to make sure whatever you're passing in here is going to work. So if we know 100% anything that's going to be my string is going to be able to turn into an integer, then we have no problems with force unwrapping that. And then you come over here and look, and now it's 100 without an optional. So that's what this exclamation mark is doing. It's force unwrapping, but you are making sure, hey, this is going to be whatever we're telling it down here. This is going to be able to turn into an integer. That's why I'm saying this right here. If you're not sure, do not use this. Safely unwrap it like we did up here, so we know, hey, if it's not what it's supposed to do, then do this. And that safely unwraps it for you. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Another operator I wanted to discuss is the Nil Coalescing Operator. Now what that does is that checks your optional and says, hey, if this is a valid number, use that valid number. If it returns nil, use this number that I set. And how that looks is with 2 question marks. So right here we can do 2 question marks. That's the Nil Coalescing Operator. And then we were going to set an actual value that'll work. So we're going to do 10,000. Now 10,000 is an integer, so that will work every single time if it was passed in here. So if it's 100, that's going to work and play 100 over here. However, if it was Frank like we did a minute ago, that's going to return nil. So it's going to say, wow, since that's nil, go ahead and return to 10,000, and it does. And if you look at the I over here, it no longer says optional because it's not. That's a number we set. So again, the Nil Coalescing Operator, if it is nil, return the number or the value we set. All right, so that's going to do it for this video and this Swift Basic tutorial series. So congratulations if you started from the beginning and made it all the way through. That is a huge accomplishment and a lot of time you took to invest in your Swift journey. Now, from here, what do we do next? Well, I'll tell you, I'm actually going to start creating some SwiftUI tutorials. If you'd like to see that, make sure you hit that bell so you can see my latest content. And of course, subscribe if you haven't yet. Lastly, tell me what you thought about the video in the series below. And if you want to see me cover something in depth or something different that you haven't seen yet, comment that as well, and I'll see if I can get to it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.